The entire wedding hall in Texas went silent. Music stopped, laughter froze, and all eyes turned to me. My face burned, not from embarrassment, but from the sharp sting of my daughter-in-law's hand across my cheek. Abigail, dressed in her flawless white gown, her makeup still perfect from the long ceremony, had just slapped me hard. "Give me the keys to your car, Vivian," she hissed, her eyes blazing with greed. "I want it. Now. Don't make me ask again." I stood there in shock, the shiny Mercedes keys clutched tightly in my trembling hand. My own son, Stephen, stood just a few feet away, frozen between his bride and his mother, as though he didn't know whose side to take. Guests whispered. Phones came out to record. My heart thumped painfully in my chest, and before I could say a single word, something happened that made the entire hall gasp even louder than before. Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Let me know where you're watching from. You might be lucky to get a shout out in our next story. And please, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy stories like this. You won't want to miss what comes next. Now, let me take you back to how all this started. I never thought my life at 65 would turn into a whirlwind of betrayal, secrets, and pain. I was a retired teacher, living quietly in a small town outside Dallas. My husband, Igor, had passed away 5 years earlier, leaving me with his savings and one gift he always said I deserved, a silver Mercedes-Benz. It wasn't just a car. It was a reminder of his love, of the years we worked hard to build a life together. When people saw me driving, they assumed I was wealthy, but the truth was I wasn't rich. I lived simply. I spent most of my pension on community programs, helping struggling kids with school supplies, and sometimes buying groceries for elderly neighbors. Kindness was the only way I knew how to live, even when people took advantage of it. My son Stephen had always been ambitious. From a young age, he dreamed of leaving town, making money and living big. I was proud of him when he got into college, then even prouder when he found a job in finance. But along the way, he met Abigail. Abigail was beautiful, I won't lie. She had bright green eyes and carried herself like she belonged on magazine covers. But there was something cold about her smile, something sharp in her words. From the very first day she visited my home, I knew she saw me as nothing more than an obstacle. She would compliment my furniture, but then smirk about how old-fashioned it was. She would hug me, but whisper comments about how I dressed. Still, I kept quiet. For Stephen's sake, I tried to love her. After all, she was going to be my daughter-in-law. Then came the wedding. I had saved up for months, determined to give them a gift they would never forget. I wasn't wealthy, but I wanted to make Stephen feel supported. I bought them an elegant crystal dining set, shipped all the way from New York. But compared to what Abigail's family brought, my gift looked small. Her parents came from money, big money. They had thrown their daughter a wedding fit for royalty. The ceremony was held in a luxurious hotel ballroom. White roses everywhere, chandeliers shining above us, violins playing in the background. Abigail looked like she had stepped out of a fairy tale. But beneath the beauty, tension brewed. Throughout the night, Abigail's eyes kept flicking toward me, her lips curling whenever she thought I wasn't looking. I brushed it off until the reception. That was when things turned ugly. Stephen had just finished his toast, thanking both families for their support, when Abigail strutted toward me with a tight smile. "Vivian," she said sweetly, "why don't you let me drive your car? You've been keeping it all to yourself for years. A wedding gift from you to me, perhaps?" The guests laughed politely, thinking it was a joke. But I knew by the look in her eyes, she meant it. I smiled softly. "Abigail, dear, that car is very special to me. It was from Igor. I can't give it away. But if you'd like, I'll happily let you drive it one day." Her smile dropped instantly. "That's not what I asked," she muttered. "I don't want to borrow it. I want it." I shook my head. "I'm sorry, Abigail. That's not possible." Her face turned red, but she turned back toward Stephen, whispering something in his ear. He looked uncomfortable, but didn't say a word. I thought that was the end of it. But I was wrong. Hours later, just as the music reached its peak and guests filled the dance floor, Abigail marched back toward me. Her voice rose above the music. "You're selfish, Vivian. Do you think keeping that car will make you young again? Do you think anyone here actually respects you? The room fell silent. Before I could answer, her hand whipped across my cheek with a loud crack. My head snapped to the side, the sting spreading across my skin. Then she shouted, "Give me the keys!" Now, gasps filled the room. Stephen stood frozen. Guess shifted uncomfortably. And I couldn't believe my own son was watching this happen. But just as Abigail reached for the keys, something or someone intervened. And that, my friends, is where things took a turn no one at that wedding could have predicted. But before I reveal what happened next, let me pause here to remind you of something important. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button now. Don't be the person who waits until the story ends. By then, you'll forget. Imagine if you missed chapter 2 because you didn't subscribe. You'd never know how this confrontation really played out. Don't risk being left in the dark. The hall buzzed with whispers, eyes darting between Abigail, Stephen, and me. My hand still clutched the car keys like a lifeline, my cheek red and burning. My heart pounded, and I could feel tears threatening to spill, but they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of something deeper, betrayal. Because right in that moment, I saw Stephen open his mouth to speak, and what came out made my world spin. The room held its breath. Abigail's hand still hovered in the air, her white gown glowing under the chandelier. My cheek burned, but I stood tall, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. Guests looked at one another nervously, unsure whether to step in or stay quiet. Then, suddenly, Angela, my niece, who had traveled all the way from California, pushed her way through the crowd. Angela was only 26, a sharp, fiery woman who had always been protective of me. "Enough," she snapped, stepping between me and Abigail. "You don't get to treat my aunt this way. Not today, not ever." Abigail blinked, stunned that anyone had dared to challenge her. She tossed her long curls and sneered. "Stay out of this, little girl. This is between me and Vivian. She owes me respect and she knows it." Angela folded her arms, glaring. "Respect is earned, not demanded. And you just lost yours the second you laid your hands on her." The guests murmured in agreement, some nodding subtly. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Abigail would realize how far she had gone. But Stephen, my son, stayed silent. He stood just a few feet away, his champagne glass still in his hand, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to speak, but didn't know what to say. That silence hurt more than the slap. I took a deep breath, forcing calm into my voice. "This is your wedding night, Abigail. Don't ruin it by making enemies. I am not giving you the car. Igor left it to me and it's mine. You have everything else today. Please, leave this." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw the kind of greed that destroys lives. But she turned with a fake smile, pressing her manicured fingers against Stephen's arm. "Fine," she said sweetly, though her eyes told a different story. "We'll talk about this later, Mother." The tension eased slightly. The music started again. Guests tried to act normal, but the whispers spread like wildfire. I could hear them. "Did you see that slap? What kind of bride does that? Poor Vivian." I wanted to disappear, but Angela stayed by my side, holding my hand. "Don't worry, Aunt," she whispered. "I've got you." For the next hour, the celebration continued as if nothing had happened. The cake was cut, the first dance was danced, and laughter returned to the hall. But underneath the glitter and smiles, I could feel the storm brewing. Abigail's eyes never left me, like a hunter stalking prey. Later, when most guests were distracted, Stephen finally came to me. His face was pale, his voice low. "Mom, I don't know what to say. Abigail, she's just stressed. The wedding, the pressure, everything." I looked him straight in the eye. "Stephen," she slapped me, in front of everyone. "Do you realize what that means?" He swallowed hard, glancing over his shoulder where Abigail laughed with her bridesmaids. "Please don't make this worse. We'll sort it out. Just trust me." Trust. That word cut deep. I had trusted him all his life, but in that moment, it felt like he was asking me to betray myself. Still, I nodded silently, not wanting to embarrass him further. The night dragged on until finally, the couple prepared to leave. Guests lined up outside the ballroom, tossing flower petals and waving sparklers as Abigail and Stephen prepared to get into their getaway car. My Mercedes sat parked nearby, shining under the hotel lights. Abigail's eyes lingered on it again, and my stomach twisted with unease. But just when I thought the worst was over, something happened that none of us could have predicted. A scream tore through the night. Guests dropped their sparklers, people rushed forward, and in the middle of the chaos, someone shouted words that froze my blood cold. The scream echoed through the hotel parking lot, piercing the night like a siren. People rushed forward, heels clicking against the pavement, voices overlapping in panic. I pushed through the crowd, Angela holding tightly onto my arm. What happened? I gasped, my chest tightening with fear. Then I saw it. Joshua, Stephen's childhood friend and one of the groomsmen, was on the ground. His tuxedo was torn, his lip bleeding, and his face pale. It was the car, he stammered. The car it almost ran me over. Everyone's eyes darted to my silver Mercedes. The headlights were still on, the engine humming softly as if someone had tried to start it. My stomach dropped. Abigail's face turned white, but then, just as quickly, she plastered on a fake smile. Oh my goodness, how terrible. Who would do something like that? She wrapped her arms around Stephen, who looked as confused as the rest of us. Joshua pulled himself up with the help of another groomsman. I swear, he panted, someone was inside that car. They tried to move it forward. If I hadn't jumped back, he stopped, trembling. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Guests exchanged nervous glances, whispering about who could have been behind the wheel. I felt my knees weaken. My car, the one Igor had left me, the one Abigail had demanded just hours earlier. My heart told me the answer, but my head refused to believe it. Surely Abigail wouldn't go that far. Angela's hand squeezed mine. She leaned close and whispered, Aunt Vivian, she's not done with you. I can feel it. I swallowed hard. Let's not jump to conclusions, I whispered back. Not yet. The hotel staff rushed in, calming the guests, moving them back toward the ballroom while the situation was handled. But I noticed Abigail, standing tall, her smile never wavering, her fingers tapping nervously against her jeweled clutch. When we were finally back inside, the music played again, though it sounded hollow now. People tried to laugh and dance, but the air was heavy with unease. I sat quietly at my table, watching Abigail twirl in Stephen's arms, her laugh a little too loud, her eyes flickering toward me every few minutes. Stephen tried to keep the night together. He gave a short speech, thanking everyone again for coming, but his words fell flat. Nobody could forget what had just happened outside. Hours later, when the reception ended and the couple was supposed to drive off into their honeymoon, Abigail suddenly announced, "We'll take Vivian's car. It's safer, bigger, and it's just sitting there anyway." The room went silent again. My hand tightened around the keys in my purse. "No," I said firmly, my voice louder than I expected. "You're not taking my car tonight. That car is not for you." Abigail's face hardened. Stephen opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Abigail snatched a glass of champagne from the nearest table and hurled it to the floor. The glass shattered, the liquid spilling across the white tiles. Gasps filled the room once again. Abigail's voice rose, sharp as a blade. "If I don't get that car tonight, everyone here is going to regret it." The sound of the glass shattering still rang in my ears. Champagne spread across the marble floor, the golden liquid reflecting the chandelier lights. Guests gasped, some stepping back, others whispering nervously. "Abigail," Stephen hissed, grabbing her arm. "What are you doing?" She yanked it free and glared at him. "I told you, Stephen. I want that car. She's being selfish. I'm your wife now, and you need to choose me or her." The words cut deeper than any slap. The room turned to Stephen, waiting for his answer. My heart sank. For a moment, I saw the little boy he used to be, running through our Texas backyard with scraped knees, calling for me when he was scared. Now he stood frozen, his face pale, caught between his new bride and his mother. Angela stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Abigail, this isn't the time or place. You're embarrassing yourself. Let it go." Abigail spun toward her, eyes flashing. "Stay out of this, Angela. You're not part of this family." Angela didn't flinch. Family doesn't slap mothers or threaten people at their own wedding. The guests nodded, murmuring agreement. A few even clapped softly. Abigail's cheeks flushed red, her smile twisting into something bitter. For the first time that night, she looked like she was losing control. Stephen finally spoke, his voice shaky. "We'll take the car we came in. Let's just end this here." Abigail's lips parted as if to argue, but she must have seen the disapproval in the guests' faces. Slowly, she forced a tight smile and muttered, "Fine. But don't think this is over." The tension lingered in the air, but the crowd gradually dispersed. Staff hurried to clean up the glass, and the band tried to lighten the mood with soft music. Still, the sparkle of the night had dimmed. I sat back in my chair, exhausted. Angela leaned over and whispered, "Aunt Vivian, you can't let her push you around. If you give in once, she'll take everything." I nodded, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for my purse. "I know, Angela. But Stephen, he's blind. He doesn't see her for who she really is." The newlyweds eventually left in their rented limousine, the cheers of the guests sounding forced this time. I stayed behind with Angela, helping the staff clear the tables. My cheeks still burned faintly from the slap, but the greater ache was in my heart. When we finally returned home, the quiet of my little house was almost too heavy. I sat in my living room, staring at Igor's picture on the mantel. His kind eyes seemed to look right into mine. "What should I do, Igor?" I whispered. "How do I protect our son from her without losing him forever?" Angela sat beside me, her hand over mine. "You're stronger than you think, Aunt. But you need to be ready. Abigail isn't done. She'll come back for that car or worse." I wanted to believe Abigail would calm down after the wedding chaos, that maybe she would apologize, or Stephen would talk sense into her. But deep down, I knew Angela was right. Abigail wasn't the type to let go. And just as I drifted into uneasy sleep that night, the phone rang. The shrill sound cut through the silence, making me jump. I reached for it, my heart thudding. On the other end was a voice I never expected to hear at that hour. "Vivian," the caller said in a hushed, urgent tone, "you need to be careful. Abigail, she's planning something. And it's not just about the car." The voice on the phone sent a chill down my spine. It was low, rushed, like the person didn't want anyone to hear them. "Who is this?" I asked, gripping the receiver tighter. There was a pause, then the voice whispered, "It's Joshua, Stephen's friend. I shouldn't even be calling you, but I couldn't stay quiet. I overheard Abigail tonight. She's planning something bigger. That car isn't the only thing she wants." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" "She was talking to one of her bridesmaids after you left. I heard her say you don't deserve the things you have, and that by marrying Stephen, everything that belonged to you would eventually be hers." She laughed about it, Vivian. She laughed. I pressed my hand to my chest, the room spinning slightly. Igor's car, my savings, even the little house we built together. Abigail thought it would all end up in her hands. Joshua's voice lowered further. "Be careful. I think she's capable of anything." Then the line went dead. I sat frozen for a moment, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. Angela rushed in from the kitchen, worry etched on her face. "Who was that?" I hung up slowly. It was Joshua. He said Abigail is planning to take everything, not just the car. Angela's eyes narrowed. I knew it. She's dangerous. We have to be smart, Aunt Vivian. We can't let her trap you or Stephen. I nodded, but my mind was heavy. What mother wants to believe her son married someone who sees life as a game of possession? Still, Joshua's warning rattled in my bones. The next morning, I tried to go about life as usual. I watered my garden, prepared breakfast, even visited my neighbor Martha to bring her some soup. Martha, a sweet woman in her 70s, noticed the faint red mark still on my cheek. "Vivian, what happened?" she asked softly. I forced a smile. "It's nothing, Martha. Just a silly accident." But she studied me with knowing eyes. Don't hide pain to protect others. Sometimes, speaking the truth is the only way to heal. Her words lingered with me the whole day. By evening, Stephen showed up at my door, Abigail at his side. My heart sank the moment I saw her. She smiled too sweetly, her arm wrapped tightly around my son. "Mom," Stephen said nervously, "we came to apologize." "Well," Abigail wanted to say something. Abigail stepped forward, her voice dripping with sugar. Vivian, I was out of line last night. The wedding stress, the champagne, it got the better of me. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Her eyes glistened as if she were about to cry. If I didn't know better, I might have believed her. But there was something in her gaze, something calculating. I nodded slowly. I accept your apology, Abigail. But let's be clear, the car is not up for discussion again. Her smile faltered just slightly before she caught herself. Of course. I completely understand. Stephen looked relieved, wrapping his arms around both of us. Good. I just want peace in this family. I smiled for his sake, but inside, I felt a storm brewing. That night, after they left, I checked the locks on every door and window. I even hid the car keys under my pillow. Joshua's warning replayed in my mind. Abigail's apology had been too smooth, too perfect. And then, just as I settled into bed, I heard it. The crunch of gravel outside my window. I froze. My heart raced as I peeked through the curtain. There, in the moonlight, a shadow moved toward my driveway, straight toward my car. The crunch of gravel outside sliced through the silence of my home. My heart leapt into my throat. I pressed my face closer to the curtain, careful not to be seen. The moonlight spilled across the driveway, casting long shadows across the hood of my Mercedes. There it was, a figure. My hands trembled as I clutched the curtain tighter. The shadowy figure crouched low, moving toward the driver's side door. My first thought was Abigail. Who else could it be? She had made her obsession with the car clear, and Joshua's warning was still echoing in my mind. But what froze me to the floor wasn't just the figure's presence, it was the glint of metal in their hand. A tool. They were trying to break in. For a split second, I thought of calling the police. My fingers even hovered above the phone. But then another thought struck me. What if it was Abigail and she twisted the story? What if Stephen believed her over me, his own mother? My blood chilled at the idea of losing him completely. Instead, I whispered sharply, Angela. She rushed in, rubbing her eyes, still half asleep. What's wrong? I pointed at the window. Her gaze followed, and when she saw the shadow near the car, her jaw dropped. It's her. I knew it, she muttered. Quiet, I warned. We can't let them know we're watching. We stood there in silence, my chest tight, my mind racing. The figure bent lower, fumbling at the car door. A faint click echoed across the driveway. My pulse raced. Were they about to get in? Angela grabbed her phone. I'm calling the cops. This is breaking and entering. But before she could dial, the figure suddenly stood up straight. They turned slightly, and for a brief second, the moonlight illuminated their face. I gasped. It wasn't Abigail. It was Joshua, the same young man who had called me the night before to warn me about her. Angela's eyes widened. What the? Why is he here? Confusion spun through my mind. Why would Joshua, who had seemed so concerned, be the one sneaking around my car in the middle of the night? Was he lying to me all along? Or was he trying to protect me from something worse? Before I could decide what to do, Joshua stepped back, his hand running nervously through his hair. He looked around the driveway, as though making sure no one had seen him. Then, without another word, he walked briskly down the street and disappeared into the shadows. Angela turned to me, her face pale. Aunt Vivian, I don't understand. Why would he do that? I sank into my chair, my hands shaking. I don't know. But one thing's certain, this isn't just about Abigail anymore. Something bigger is happening. The next morning, neither of us could stop thinking about what we'd seen. Over coffee, Angela paced the kitchen. We need to confront him. He can't just sneak around like that. What if he's working with Abigail? Or against her, I said quietly. What if he was checking the car for something? Maybe he was making sure she hadn't tampered with it. Angela frowned. Then why not just knock on the door and tell us? Why sneak around like a thief? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that my trust had cracked again. I had thought Abigail was the only danger, but now Joshua's strange behavior added another layer of fear. That afternoon, Stephen called. His voice was cheerful, almost forced. Mom, Abigail wants to invite you over for dinner this weekend. Just to, start fresh. Angela, listening on speakerphone, rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed no. But another part of me, the mother in me, couldn't bear the thought of pushing Stephen further away. If I refused, Abigail would twist it, make me look like the problem. All right, I said softly. I'll come. Good, Stephen said, relief flooding his tone. You'll see, Mom. Things will be better. But deep down, I doubted it. Saturday evening arrived faster than I wanted. Angela insisted on coming with me, and I was glad she did. Abigail's house, well, Stephen's house now, was spotless, decorated like a showroom. Abigail greeted us at the door with her dazzling fake smile. Vivian, she sang sweetly, kissing my cheek. Angela, how nice of you to join us. Angela stiffened but forced a polite nod. Dinner was elegant, roasted salmon, fresh salad, wine in crystal glasses. Abigail played the perfect hostess, laughing, complimenting my earrings, even asking about my garden. But I could feel the tension beneath it all, like a snake coiled under the tablecloth. At one point, Abigail leaned forward, her green eyes sparkling. Vivian, I've been thinking. Since Stephen and I are starting our new life together, maybe it would make sense for us to help manage some of your belongings. You know, to make sure everything is taken care of. Angela nearly choked on her water. Belongings, she repeated. Abigail smiled sweetly. Yes, the house, the car, your accounts. It's a lot for one person your age to handle. Don't you think it would be easier to let us step in? The fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. I stared at her, my face heating. My age. Abigail, I am perfectly capable of managing what I have, and none of it belongs to you. The mask slipped. Just for a second, her smile hardened into a glare. Then she quickly covered it with a laugh. Oh, Vivian, I only meant to help. Don't take it the wrong way. But Angela wasn't buying it. She slammed her fork down. You're not fooling anyone. We know what you're after. The room went quiet. Stephen shifted uncomfortably. Angela, please. Can we just have one peaceful dinner? I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, the doorbell rang. Abigail frowned. Who could that be? Stephen got up to answer, and when the door swung open, my blood froze. It was Joshua, standing there, his face tense, his eyes darting between us. Vivian, he said quickly, ignoring everyone else. We need to talk. Right now. The room turned ice cold the moment Joshua stepped across the threshold. His presence was a shock to everyone, but the way his eyes zeroed in on me, ignoring Stephen, ignoring Abigail, made the air so thick you could cut it with a knife. Abigail's smile faltered. Joshua, what on earth are you doing here? Stephen frowned, bewildered. Wait, you two know each other? Joshua didn't answer. He kept his gaze locked on me, urgency radiating from every muscle in his body. Vivian, please. We need to talk. Alone. Angela jumped to her feet, instantly. Not without me. Abigail forced a laugh, though the muscles in her jaw tightened. This is absurd. Vivian, whatever this young man has to say can surely wait until after dinner. But Joshua shook his head firmly. No, it can't. Not if you care about your life. The words landed like a thunderclap. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Stephen shot up from his chair. What kind of nonsense is this? Joshua, if this is some prank. It's not a prank, Joshua snapped, his voice hard. Then, softer, he added, Vivian, I'll explain everything. But you need to hear it from me, not from them. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't know whom to believe anymore. My son's new wife, who had already shown her greedy hand, or this strange young man who had warned me in secret and then been caught sneaking around my car. But one thing was certain, I needed answers. Fine, I said firmly, rising from the table. Joshua, let's talk. Angela followed at my side like a shadow. We stepped out into the cool night air, the crickets buzzing in the hedges. Abigail stood at the doorway, arms folded, watching like a hawk. Stephen hovered behind her, confusion written all over his face. Once we were at the end of the driveway, Joshua turned to me. His face was pale, his jaw clenched. I'm sorry for startling you the other night, he began quickly. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was checking your car. Checking it? Angela repeated, her eyes narrowing. For what? You looked like you were trying to steal it. Joshua shook his head. No, I was making sure it hadn't been tampered with. Abigail, she asked me to help her disable your car so you'd be stranded and forced to depend on her. My stomach lurched. She what? Joshua nodded. She wanted me to do it while you slept. She thought if your car broke down, Stephen would insist you move in with them. That way she could keep an eye on you and on your assets. Angela gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. I gripped Joshua's arm. And why are you telling me this now? Why warn me at all? He exhaled shakily. Because I didn't agree to it. I told her no. But she's persistent, Vivian. She's dangerous in ways you don't see. I couldn't stand by and watch her trap you. That's why I called you. That's why I checked the car myself, to make sure she hadn't found someone else to do it. The pieces of the puzzle clicked together in my head. His late-night call, his warning, the sight of him in the driveway. It all made sense now, though I still wasn't sure whether I could fully trust him. Angela crossed her arms. If all this is true, then why stay involved with her at all? Why keep showing up around us? Joshua's expression hardened. Because I know too much. Abigail doesn't like loose ends. If she realizes I betrayed her, she'll come after me too. The only way to protect myself is to protect Vivian and to make sure Abigail doesn't win. I stared at him, torn between fear and gratitude. Could I trust this young man, or was he just another pawn in Abigail's twisted game? When we walked back inside, Abigail was waiting with that painted-on smile that barely masked her fury. Well, she asked sweetly, did Joshua tell you his tall tales? He's been obsessed with me for months, Vivian. Always following me. Always trying to stir trouble. He's unstable. I didn't want to say anything, but now you see what I've been dealing with. Joshua's face darkened. That's a lie, and you know it. Abigail's voice rose, dripping with false innocence. Stephen, you believe me, don't you? You know I'd never do something like that. Stephen looked torn, his gaze darting between his wife, his mother, and Joshua. I don't know what to believe. Angela snapped. Of course you don't, because she's been playing you from day one. Open your eyes, Stephen. Abigail's smile broke, replaced by venom. You little brat. You think you can talk to me like that in my own home? It's not your home. I shot back, my voice firm. It's my son's. And as long as my son lives here, I have a right to protect him from people like you. For the first time, Abigail's mask slipped entirely. Her eyes burned with rage. You think you're so clever, Vivian, but you're just an old woman clinging to the scraps of her life. Everything you have, your house, your money, your car, it's only a matter of time before it's mine. One way or another. Stephen's face turned ashen. Abigail, what are you saying? She froze, realizing her slip. Then she forced a laugh, brushing it off. I was only joking, darling. Don't look so serious. But the damage was done. Stephen had heard it, and so had I. That night, back in my house, I couldn't sleep. Abigail's words replayed in my mind like a curse. One way or another, it's mine. Joshua sat with us in the living room, wringing his hands. She won't stop, Vivian. Not until she gets what she wants. And if I keep helping you, she'll know. She'll come after me too. Angela put a hand on his shoulder. Then stick with us. We'll figure this out together. I looked between them. The fiery loyalty in Angela's eyes, the nervous determination in Joshua's. For the first time, I realized I wasn't alone in this fight. But Abigail was smart, cunning, and relentless. If I was going to protect myself and my son from her, I needed to be smarter. Then we don't wait for her to make her next move, I said slowly. We make ours first. Joshua looked at me, startled. What do you mean? I straightened in my chair, my resolve hardening. Abigail thinks she's playing a game. Well, I've played games before, and I've never lost one. Angela smirked. Now that's the Aunt Vivian I know. Joshua swallowed nervously. So what's the plan? I leaned forward, my voice low. First we dig. We find out everything there is to know about Abigail. Her past, her secrets, her weaknesses. If she wants to ruin me, then we'll ruin her first. And for the first time since Abigail had entered my life, I felt a spark of control returning. She thought she could take everything from me. She was wrong. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, but I didn't feel its warmth. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, untouched, staring at the steam rising as if it held answers I hadn't yet found. Angela sat across from me, scribbling notes in a notebook she'd pulled from her backpack. Joshua lingered near the back door, pacing like a restless cat. Abigail's threat still echoed in my head. One way or another, it's mine. She wasn't joking. Not for a second. Angela broke the silence first. So, where do we start? If we're digging into her past, we need a plan. Joshua nodded, stopping mid-step. Abigail grew up in Florida. She mentioned it once, back when I thought she was... He stopped, biting his lip. Back before I saw her true side. Angela raised a brow. Florida, huh? People don't just move across states for no reason. Maybe there's something she left behind. I tapped my finger against the mug. We'll need records. Public records, court filings, maybe even old news articles. And people, friends, neighbors, anyone who knew her back then. If Abigail's hiding something, it's probably tied to her past. Angela grinned. Lucky for us, I'm basically a bloodhound when it comes to online research. She spun the notebook toward me, where she'd written 3 columns: background, connections, weaknesses. Joshua leaned in, impressed. You're serious about this, huh? Angela smirked. When someone threatens my family, you bet I'm serious. I gave her hand a squeeze. You have your mother's spirit. Strong and stubborn. For a moment, the heaviness in the room lifted. But then Joshua's phone buzzed. He glanced down and his face paled. What is it? I asked. He swallowed. It's from Abigail. Angela leaned over. What does it say? Joshua hesitated, then read aloud. Meet me tonight. No more games. If you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. The room went silent. Angela whispered, What you've done? What's she talking about? Joshua ran a hand through his hair. I don't know. She always twists things. But if she's threatening me, that means she knows I've betrayed her. She's on to me. I set my mug down firmly. Then we don't let her control the story. We find the truth before she destroys us all. Angela spent the afternoon glued to her laptop, fingers flying over the keys. Joshua helped where he could, feeding her names, dates, and bits of information he remembered from Abigail's stories. I hovered nearby, anxious but grateful for their determination. Hours passed before Angela gasped. Got something. We crowded around her screen. On it was a blurry newspaper clipping from a Florida local paper, dated 5 years ago. The headline read, Local woman charged in credit card scam, charges dropped. Beneath it was a photo, a younger Abigail, hair longer, smile brighter, but unmistakably her. Joshua's mouth fell open. I had no idea. Angela scrolled quickly. She was accused of running a scam with 2 men, stealing credit card information from hotel guests. But the charges were dropped after insufficient evidence. No one knows why. My blood ran cold. Dropped doesn't mean innocent. It just means she was clever enough to wriggle free. Angela dug deeper, finding forum posts and old social media threads. Looks like she vanished from Florida right after that. Packed up and left. No forwarding address, no contact. Just gone. Joshua rubbed his temples, which explains why she was so eager to reinvent herself here. New state, new name, new story. I sat back, shaking my head. And Stephen has no idea. He thinks he married a woman with a spotless past. Angela's voice hardened. We need proof strong enough to show him. Something undeniable. A paper trail, witnesses, anything. Joshua hesitated. That won't be easy. Abigail covered her tracks. And if she senses we're digging, she'll strike harder. I looked at them both, my jaw set. Then we have to be careful. Smart. She thinks I'm weak, that I'll just fold under pressure. But she's about to learn that I didn't survive 65 years on this earth by being foolish. Angela smiled faintly. That's the Aunt Vivian we need. Later that night, the 3 of us sat in the living room, the weight of the day pressing down. Joshua checked his phone again and again, as if expecting Abigail to barge through the door. Angela tapped her pen against the notebook, restless. Finally, I broke the silence. We're not confronting her yet. Not until we have every piece of the puzzle. We'll let her think she's in control. Let her underestimate us. And when the time comes, I paused, my voice cold. We'll take everything from her. Joshua looked uneasy, but he nodded. All right, but be ready. Abigail doesn't play fair. Angela yawned, stretching. Neither do we. For the first time in days, I almost felt like smiling. But that small comfort shattered when headlights swept across the living room window. A car pulled into the driveway, fast, too fast. Angela jumped to her feet. Who's that? Joshua peered out the curtain. His face went pale. It's her. It's Abigail. My stomach dropped. She wasn't supposed to come here, not tonight, not after that text. A moment later, the doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Angela whispered, "Don't answer it." But Abigail's voice came from outside, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Vivian, I know you're in there. Open this door, or I swear you'll regret it." The doorbell rang again, harder this time, followed by a pounding fist that rattled the frame. "Vivian," Abigail's voice pierced the night like a blade. "Don't make me stand out here like some beggar. Open this door." Angela clutched my arm. "Don't you dare let her in. She's dangerous." Joshua's face was pale, his fists clenched at his sides. "If she came here, she's desperate. That makes her unpredictable." I took a deep breath, my heart hammering. I had survived worse storms in my life, but nothing prepared me for staring down the woman who wanted to strip me of everything I had left. The door shook again. "Open up, Vivian, or I'll make sure the whole neighborhood hears what you've been hiding." Joshua hissed under his breath. "She's bluffing. She doesn't have anything on you. She's trying to scare you." Angela straightened her shoulders, fire flashing in her eyes. "Then let's see if she can handle her own medicine." Before I could stop her, Angela stormed toward the door and yanked it open. Abigail stood on the porch, her hair wild, her eyes blazing. She wasn't the polished bride from the wedding anymore. Her mask had slipped. She looked feral, her manicured nails tapping against the frame like claws. "Well, well," she sneered, her gaze sliding from Angela to me. The queen herself, hiding behind her loyal lapdogs. How pathetic. Angela shot back, better pathetic than a fraud. "We know about Florida, Abigail." Abigail froze for half a second, then forced a laugh. "Florida? You've really gone digging, haven't you? I should have known you'd put your little minion on the case." Her eyes darted to Joshua. "And you, traitor, after everything I did for you." Joshua stepped forward, jaw tight. "Everything you did was for yourself. Don't twist it." Abigail's smile twisted into something darker. "Careful, Joshua. You know I can bury you just as easily as I can bury her." My chest tightened, but I refused to flinch. "You've done enough, Abigail. You need to leave." She tilted her head, mock pity in her eyes. "Oh, Vivian, you really don't get it, do you? I'm not leaving. This," she gestured around wildly, "this life, this house, that car, it should all be mine already. And if you don't hand it over willingly, then I'll take it piece by piece." Angela snapped, "You're insane." Abigail smirked. "Maybe, but insanity gets results." For a tense moment, the four of us stood locked in silence, the air so heavy it was hard to breathe. Then, suddenly, Abigail reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She waved it in the air. "You think you're safe, Vivian? Think again. I've got leverage. And when I'm done, Stephen won't just side with me. He'll hate you for the rest of his life." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's on that paper?" Her grin widened. "Wouldn't you like to know?" She stuffed it back into her bag. "You'll find out soon enough." Joshua stepped forward. "You're bluffing. Whatever's in there, it's fake." Abigail's eyes glittered with malice. "Oh, Joshua, always so sure of yourself. Tell me, what do you think Stephen will believe? The woman he married, or the bitter old woman clinging to a past that no longer matters?" I felt Angela trembling beside me, fury and fear colliding. But before either of us could speak, Abigail leaned in close, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Tick-tock, Vivian. The clock's running out. You'd better decide what matters more, your pride or your son." Then, with a wicked smile, she turned on her heel and stalked down the driveway, her heels clicking like gunshots against the pavement. Her car roared to life, taillights bleeding red as she sped off into the night. The silence that followed was deafening. Angela slammed the door shut, her hands shaking. She's bluffing. She has to be. Joshua rubbed his temples. I don't know. Abigail doesn't bluff unless she's certain she has the upper hand. I sank into the nearest chair, exhaustion washing over me. She's playing a game I don't know all the rules to. That paper, it could be anything. A forged document, a fake contract, lies twisted into truths. Angela crouched beside me, gripping my hand. Then we fight fire with fire. We dig deeper. We find something so undeniable that even Stephen can't turn away. Joshua nodded reluctantly. If she's threatening to turn him against you, we need to act fast. Because once Stephen's loyalty shifts, she'll have everything she wants. I closed my eyes, memories of Stephen as a little boy flashing before me. His laughter, his first steps, his graduation day. He was my son, my flesh and blood. I couldn't lose him to a woman like Abigail. Not without a fight. Then we keep digging, I whispered. No matter what it takes. The next few days were a blur of late-night research and hushed conversations. Angela combed through online records, pulling every thread she could find. Joshua called old contacts, hoping someone from Abigail's Florida past would talk. But Abigail wasn't idle either. She called Stephen constantly, painting herself as the victim, crying over imagined slights. I could see the strain on my son's face each time he came by. He was torn, caught between two worlds, the mother who had raised him and the wife who had wrapped him in her web. One evening, Stephen showed up at my house, his eyes red, his voice trembling. Mom, Abigail says you're spreading lies about her, that you've turned Angela and Joshua against her. Please, please tell me it isn't true. My heart broke. I wanted to tell him everything, lay out every detail we had uncovered. But I knew if I rushed it, Abigail would twist it before he could believe me. So I just took his hands in mine and said softly, Stephen, all I've ever wanted is what's best for you. Remember that. He pulled away, frustration flickering in his eyes. That's not an answer. Before I could respond, Angela appeared in the doorway, holding her laptop. Aunt Vivian, you need to see this. She turned the screen toward us. On it was a police report newly uploaded into the database, stamped with Abigail's full name. It wasn't from Florida, it was from here in our own state. My stomach dropped as I read the charge, fraudulent loan application, under investigation. Stephen's face drained of color. No, that can't be. But the evidence was right there, black and white. Angela's voice was grim. She didn't just run from her past. She brought it with her. The room spun around me. Abigail wasn't just greedy, she was dangerous. And now, Stephen had no choice but to see the truth. Or so I thought. Because at that exact moment, my phone buzzed with a message notification. I glanced at it and my blood ran cold. It was from Abigail. And it was a photo. A photo of Stephen, sleeping in her arms, with the caption, "Choose wisely, Vivian, or you'll lose him forever." The photo on my phone felt like a cold hand squeezing my heart. Stephen, eyes closed, head resting on Abigail's shoulder, both of them wrapped in the kind of tender pose lovers share in late-night photos. The caption read, "Choose wisely, Vivian, or you'll lose him forever." My hands went numb. The room tilted. For an instant I could only stare at the screen, as if the little rectangle of light contained the whole world, and now that world was slipping through my fingers. Stephen's face had gone pale. He looked as if someone had punched him. "She sent that," he whispered. Why would she take a picture like that? His voice broke. He tried to finish, then gave up. The hurt in his eyes was more devastating than Abigail's slap had been. Abigail's plan was working. She crafted an image to make me look like the villain, the controlling, jealous mother watching and trying to ruin her son's happiness. She wanted him on the defensive. She wanted him to believe she was the innocent victim wrapped in loving arms. The strategy was cruel and simple. Make me look bad, keep his heart soft for her, and slowly cut out everything that belonged to me. Angela slammed her laptop shut. Her jaw was tight. Joshua paced the floor, his face hard as stone. He stopped by me and placed a trembling hand on my shoulder. "Vivian, we have to act fast." I nodded, trying to steady myself. "We do. But we have to be smart. If we lash out at Stephen now, he'll retreat. He's already confused. Abigail is good at twisting things. Joshua's eyes flashed. Let her try. We already have proof. Remember the Florida articles, the fraudulent loan application? We can show Stephen the paper trail. He can't ignore that. We have to be careful how we present it, Angela said. People bend when they see black and white. But Abigail will call those facts lies. She'll cry and say she's being persecuted. She's practiced this. We set to work. The house turned into a strategy room. There were lists and sticky notes and printed pages spread across the dining table, like clues in a detective novel. Angela printed everything she'd found. The Florida clipping, the loan investigation report, the forum posts. Joshua compiled a timeline showing Abigail's moves when she arrived in Texas, who she associated with, and which accounts and loans had disappeared from public view when she moved. I sat and watched them, feeling both helpless and fierce. It was one thing to live through a betrayal. It was another to stand up and make sure the truth was seen. When Stephen came by later that afternoon, I stayed calm. He stood at my kitchen doorway, the picture still heavy in his mind. He tried to smile, but the effort failed. Mom, he said softly, I'm so tired. She's been sending me messages all day. She says you're trying to ruin her life. I met his eyes. Stephen, come in. Sit. He sat across from me like the boy he used to be, the man I had raised, the son I loved without measure. I don't want to make you choose, I said, but I will not let anyone hurt you or use you. I'm going to show you something, and then I'll let you decide. He frowned, wary. What is it? I asked Angela to bring over the printed files. She set them gently on the table like evidence. I laid out the timeline, the Florida article, the loan probe, the notes Joshua had made. I explained, slowly, carefully, who had said what and when. I avoided anger. Anger helps some people hear less. At first, Stephen shifted uncomfortably. He shook his head. This can't be true. Abigail told me she was falsely accused in Florida. She said she was forced to leave people behind. She said the charges were. They were dropped, I said softly. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. Abigail has a way of sliding out from under consequences. We don't know the whole story, but we know she has a pattern. We know she has lied about things before. And we know she threatened me. He looked down at the table. Doubt warred with love on his face. Abigail had been his partner through wedding planning, late-night calls, and honeymoon plans. A mountain of small kind acts was a heavy thing to overturn with a few printed pages. I understood that. That's why we needed more. Joshua cleared his throat. Stephen, look at the dates. Look at the loan she applied for after she moved. Look at the gaps. Something doesn't add up. She's been trying to secure control. Stephen's jaw tightened. If she's doing this, why would she do it here? Why me? He sounded betrayed more than angry. Because you have what she wants, I said. A life she can step into. Money. A home. A place to control. People who will believe the version she tells. Silence fell. He rubbed his forehead. The photo pinged again on my phone, a new message. Abigail, if you don't listen, I'll make sure the cops get involved. The words were a hammer stroke. I felt the blood rush to my face. Abigail was escalating threats. Legal threats, emotional blackmail, pressure designed to wear down Stephen until he surrendered. We had information, but I could see his defenses were thin. He loved her. He wanted to believe her. He didn't want to be the son who turned away from his wife because of his mother. We needed something that would make him look objectively at Abigail. Not just stories or suspicions, but real proof. Documents, signatures, a paper trail that showed pattern and intent. That night, Angela suggested something daring. We should check your estate documents, Vivian. See if anything has changed. Get a title search on the house. See who's on the car insurance. If Abigail has been trying to position herself legally, we'll find it. Joshua added, and I can check bank records indirectly. I have a cousin at the credit union who can tell us if large transfers happened in suspicious ways, without giving us private details, just enough to know if we should be alarmed. We worked like that, careful, patient, pushing forward. The days blurred into one another. The neighborhood hummed with normal life while our small team dug through paper and online archives like miners searching for gold. We called attorneys for advice, just general consultations, no formal filings yet. We learned what Abigail could do and what she could not do without signatures or power of attorney. Then, one afternoon, a discovered file changed everything. Angela found it while scrolling through public property records. There, baked into a routine update, was a record I had never expected to see. An application for power of attorney on my behalf, filed with a legal assistant's name and an address affiliated with Abigail's sister. My head reeled. I had not signed anything. I did not know of any paperwork transferring control. I had always handled my own affairs. I had mailed my taxes personally, signed the paperwork at the bank, and kept a small stack of important documents in a safe. Whoever had filed this had forged my name or tricked me into signing without knowing what I'd signed. How is that possible? I whispered. Joshua's face was tight. If that application is real and accepted, she could be trying to control your estate. She could be the one who can sign documents for you, access your accounts, or move assets. We all stared at the file. It was dated last month, 3 weeks after the wedding. Stephen showed up during our heated discussion. He looked tired, worn thin, and I could tell by the way he stood in the doorway that the fight inside him was getting harder. "Mom," he said softly. He saw the file open on the table and froze. "What is that?" I told him the truth. I explained the application. I explained our fears. I showed him the proof. He read, slowly. I watched the color drain from his face. For a moment, he sat down hard, like the weight was too much for him to bear. "This can't be," he said. "She would never." "She would," Angela said quietly. "And she might have already tried." We needed legal help fast. I called the attorney we had consulted briefly before, the one with the calm voice and the sensible glasses. When he answered, I rushed through the facts. He asked a few pointed questions, then told me to come in immediately with the originals of any documents I had. I gathered what little I could: my driver's license, the title to the Mercedes, the deed to the house, and a handful of account statements. I had copies, but the originals mattered. If someone had forged anything, my attorney could see the differences. He could file for emergency injunctions to block any transfers. He could, perhaps, freeze activity until the fraud was investigated. As I pulled on my jacket, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, then turned pale. It was a photograph message, this time of a man in a dark suit I didn't recognize, standing in front of my house, camera focused on the front door. The caption read, "Visitor today. He stops by to talk about the power of attorney." Funny, isn't it? My hand shook. Abigail had a network. She had people who would show up and try to intimidate. She had already begun moving pieces into place. The attorney's office was a small, quiet room smelling of coffee and paper. He looked at the file we'd pulled up and then at me. "We'll act immediately," he said. "If this power of attorney is fraudulent, I'll file an emergency order to prevent any action under it. And I'll contact the county to see when it was filed and by whom. If necessary, I'll involve law enforcement." Relief warmed my chest for a second, like a flashlight cutting through blackness. But when I got back into the car, I found a voicemail. My voice faltered when I heard it. "Vivian," Abigail's voice said on the message, silky and calm, "you're making a terrible mistake. Back off, or you'll see what happens when a person loses everything." A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was a siege. I looked at Stephen, who stood beside the car, and I saw the man I loved. I thought of Igor and of the quiet life we had built together. Gardens, church potlucks, small kindnesses, and late-night talks. I thought of the boy who had learned to tie his shoes on our porch swing. "Stephen," I said quietly, "I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to look. Let the evidence speak for itself, and know that I will fight for you for the life we had." He looked at me with new resolve sparkling in his tired eyes. "Then we fight," he said. Together. We were ready to fight. But Abigail had already lit the first fuse. As I turned the key in my car, a notification on my phone popped up, an official-looking email from the county clerk's office. It was a hearing notice, scheduled for tomorrow morning, filed by Abigail. The courthouse smelled of paper and old coffee. It was a small building in Dallas where I had registered to vote for years. I never thought I'd be back here for anything but civic duty. Today my heart hammered so loud. I thought the whole room could hear it. We arrived early. Angela wore a calm face, but her hands trembled as she held the stack of printed papers. Joshua had called ahead and told the attorney we were serious. Stephen walked in with his shoulders tight, his jaw clenched. He looked older than his age, as if the stress had added years overnight. The courtroom was small. There were rows of wooden benches and a single long table for lawyers. I sat between Angela and Joshua. They put their hands on each of my shoulders like anchors. My attorney, Mr. Carter, had a folder thick with documents and a steady voice. He gave me a quick nod that said he had done what he could. When the bailiff called the case, I felt my knees go weak. Abigail walked in like a queen. She had a new dress, perfect hair, and a face made for cameras. She smiled at people in the room, the way someone smiles before swallowing a secret. Behind her sat a woman I had never met, a tight-lipped woman with a legal pad. I guess she might be a paralegal or a paid witness. Abigail's lawyer was a polished man with a crisp suit. He carried a briefcase like a shield. He sat at the front and opened his laptop with practiced ease. The judge wore small glasses and a soft voice. He explained the matter, a petition for temporary authorization by Abigail, who claimed she needed power of attorney to assist with Mrs. Vivian's affairs. The judge's tone was neutral, but his eyes moved over the papers as if scanning the weight of what lay before him. Mr. Carter stood and spoke first. His voice was respectful but firm. Your Honor, we believe the application filed by Ms. Abigail is fraudulent. We have evidence that shows inconsistencies in signatures and timelines. We request an emergency injunction to prevent any transfer of assets or changes to titles. Abigail's lawyer smiled thinly. Your Honor, my client is simply trying to ensure that Mrs. Vivian receives proper care. There is no fraud. We have an application that shows consent. We ask that the court allow Ms. Abigail temporary oversight to prevent mismanagement. When he said the word consent, the room chilled. I felt each person in the room glance at the other, as if searching for who to trust. Mr. Carter presented our first exhibit, a certified copy of the power of attorney application with a stamped county filing. He also presented a handwritten affidavit from me saying I never signed such papers. He pointed out subtle differences in what my signature looked like on my driver's license and on the application. The handwriting experts were not present, but Mr. Carter used the phone camera and zoomed in on letters. He showed loops where they did not belong and a strange flourish that I did not use. Abigail's lawyer called a witness, the legal assistant who had processed the application at the county office. She said she had accepted the documents and filed them. Her voice was steady. She said the form looked complete and that the clerk had processed it on the day shown on the stamp. Did you verify the identity of the person who signed? Mr. Carter asked. The woman shifted. We rely on the documents provided. There were photocopies and a notarized statement. Mr. Carter leaned in. Who notarized it? Silence. The woman glanced down at her notes. The notary seal was included. We did not have reason to suspect a forgery. The judge made a small sound and wrote something in his notebook. Ms. Abigail, he said, you filed for temporary authorization. Do you claim that Mrs. Vivian signed the documents willingly? Abigail rose, folded her hands, and said in a measured voice, Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Vivian signed after a mild conversation. She is elderly and needs help managing details. I only wanted to protect her. Her words were smooth. They felt rehearsed, practiced like a speech on a stage. My chest tightened, as if someone had put a band around it. Mr. Carter asked for a brief recess to bring more evidence. He wanted time to contact handwriting experts and to track the chain of custody of the documents. The judge granted it. We stepped into the hallway, a flurry of whispers surrounding us. Abigail smiled at us in the doorway, lips thin and polite. Outside the courtroom, people shuffled past like actors in a play. I saw faces I recognized from church and from the farmer's market. Some shook their heads, others looked away. I wanted to shout to them all the truth. Instead, I breathed and tried to remember the kind of woman I had always been. Mr. Carter turned to us. We can do this. But they filed first. They will use the time to make it seem urgent that she takes temporary control. If we don't move fast, the judge may grant a temporary order because it appears that Mrs. Vivian consents. Angela's knuckles went white as she gripped my arm. Is there a way to show how thoroughly this was forged? She asked. There is, Mr. Carter said. We need an expert to compare signatures and the notary's seal. We need testimony that shows Mrs. Vivian could not have signed these documents at that time. And we need to show motive. The more we can prove Abigail's intent, the better. Joshua's face was pale but determined. I can call a friend who knows the notary. Maybe she was coerced. He hesitated. Or maybe the notary was paid. Mr. Carter nodded. Good. We also need to show the timeline, where Abigail was on the day the document was signed. If we can prove she had been in contact with certain people just before the document was filed, that helps. We returned to the courtroom after an hour. The judge listened as both sides exchanged more papers. Abigail's team argued the need to act quickly for my welfare. My attorney argued that a temporary order would hand the keys of my life to someone who had not been proven trustworthy. Then the hearing took a sting I hadn't expected. Abigail's lawyer mentioned witnesses who would speak to my vulnerability. He asked a witness to the stand, a neighbor who had allegedly seen me confused at home, leaving the house late at night, forgetting small things. The woman's face was sympathetic, and she spoke about times I had been tired and forgetful. I felt faint like the floor had tilted under my feet. Stephen's hand shook the moment I felt the moment slip. He looked at the neighbor's face, then at Abigail, then at me. Mom, he whispered, and his eyes filled with sorrow. I wanted to respond, to show him the strong woman he knew, the woman who paid her bills on time and gardened every morning, but my voice felt thin and small. But then, as if the room had waited for the single small spark to flint into light, Mr. Carter stood and handed the judge a small packet of new evidence. Your Honor, he said, we have obtained more documents. We request that the court review them now. The judge squinted at the papers and asked for silence. The bailiff shuffled through the packet and brought forth an envelope labeled Exhibit C. My heart pounded. Mr. Carter explained that he had arranged for a handwriting expert to email a preliminary report. The judge agreed to accept it as part of the record for the temporary decision. The bailiff connected a laptop to the courtroom projector. Faces leaned in. On the screen appeared two images, my driver's license signature and the signature on the power of attorney application. The expert had circled differences, loops where I never looped, a flourish I never used. The report said the signatures were highly inconsistent and recommended a full forensic review. Just as the room exhaled, thinking we might have the upper hand, Abigail's lawyer rose. He tapped a key on his laptop, and the projector changed. A new photograph appeared. It showed a small, neat office with a desk and a chair. On the desk, someone had photographed a piece of paper. The paper showed my signature and a notary stamp. The image was grainy, but clear enough to show the signature. The caption on the slide read, "Signed, Vivian. Witnessed by Pastor Daniel." The photograph was dated 2 days before the filing. A hush fell. I stared at the screen, my stomach dropping into my shoes. Pastor Daniel. He was our church pastor, a kind man who had married Stephen and Abigail at the wedding. He had come to the wedding and he had been kind. Mr. Carter's face tightened. Your Honor, how was this photograph obtained? Abigail's lawyer smiled. We have witnesses who can attest the form was signed in the presence of Pastor Daniel, who can be called to verify Mrs. Vivian's signature. My throat closed. I had trusted Pastor Daniel. He had been a friend for years. How could he be involved? The projector flicked and the next slide came up. It was a short video clip. It showed a small kitchen table with papers on it. My hand, reached into the frame and signed slowly. The camera angle did not show the signer's face, but the hands looked like mine. The video showed someone closing the folder and tucking it into an envelope. My breath stopped. Mr. Carter reached for the laptop, his face drained. He whispered, "Where did that video come from?" Abigail's lawyer did not answer. He simply said, "We believe it corroborates that Mrs. Vivian signed." Stephen's eyes darted to mine. "Is that you?" he asked, voice small. I shook my head, but my hands betrayed me. They trembled as if someone had taken hold of them. I could not explain how the video had been made. I had never allowed anyone to film my hands signing anything like that. I went cold as if the room's air had been replaced by ice. The judge leaned forward. "This changes things," he said slowly. "If there is evidence that Mrs. Vivian signed, the court must consider the possibility that she gave consent." Mr. Carter asked for a recess. He said he needed to investigate the provenance of the video and to subpoena the pastor for testimony. The judge agreed to delay a final decision until the next morning, but the temporary hearing closed with a warning. The court expected both sides to bring forth witnesses and definitive proof. We left the court in a scramble. Abigail walked past us with a small smile like a triumph. Stephen's face was full of confusion and worry. I felt as if I had taken one step forward only to be tossed back 10 steps. That night, I could not sleep. The image of the video haunted me. The slow closing of a folder that could change everything. I thought of Pastor Daniel, of his kind face, of confessions shared in the church office over the years. Had he been filmed? Had he been tricked into witnessing a forgery? Or had he been paid to help? Joshua called an old friend who worked in videography. "If that clip exists," the friend said, "we can analyze it. The metadata could show where it was filmed and whether it was edited." Angela's voice was steady but fierce. "Do it. Find it. We need to know who filmed that. And we need to find Pastor Daniel." As the night faded and dawn rose pale over Dallas, I understood one thing. The fight was no longer only about documents and cars. It was about truth in people's souls. Abigail could twist paper, hire someone to take a video, or call in favors. But she could not erase the memories of a life lived honestly. We would need a miracle or a very smart plan. And tomorrow, under the eyes of the court, the miracle or the plan would have to appear. The next morning, the courthouse was heavy with silence. I held Angela's hand as we walked in, Joshua on my other side. My legs felt like lead, but my heart knew this was the last battle. Pastor Daniel was called to the stand. He looked pale, ashamed. When Abigail's lawyer asked if he had witnessed me sign the power of attorney, he swallowed hard. "No," he said finally. His voice shook. I was pressured. Abigail told me it was just a routine form. She asked me to lend my name as a witness. I never saw Vivian sign anything. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Abigail stiffened, her smile cracking. Mr. Carter seized the moment. He called Joshua's videography friend, who explained how the signing video Abigail presented had metadata proving it was filmed weeks earlier, with different timestamps stitched together. In other words, a fake. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. So not only was this power of attorney forged, but false evidence was presented to this court. Abigail's lawyer tried to object, but it was useless. The truth was out. Then Stephen stood. His voice broke, but it was steady. "Your Honor, I was blind. I believe my wife without question. But now I see what she's done to my mother. I can't defend this anymore." The courtroom went still. Abigail's face drained of color. For the first time, she looked cornered. The judge's gavel struck. Petition denied. This court finds evidence of fraud. I am referring this matter to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. It was over. Abigail screamed, lunging toward me, but the bailiff restrained her. Her words were venom, her voice echoing as she was dragged away. "This isn't the end, Vivian. You'll regret this." But her threats no longer carried weight. The walls she had built of lies had collapsed in full view of everyone. I turned to Stephen. Tears streamed down his face as he fell into my arms. "Mom, I'm sorry. I let her poison me against you." I held him tight. "You're my son. That's all that matters. We'll heal." Angela and Joshua hugged me too. The four of us bound together stronger than before. As we left the courthouse into the bright Dallas sun, I breathed freely for the first time in months. My car was still mine, my home still safe, but more importantly, I still had my son. Abigail had tried to steal more than wealth. She had tried to steal love, family, and dignity. But in the end, truth and resilience had prevailed. And as I stood on those courthouse steps, I whispered to myself, she may have slapped me, humiliated me, and tried to take everything I had, but she will never take my spirit. The chapter closed. My story, our story, belonged to us again.